I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, spilling my guts to strangers on the internet because I don't know what else to do. My name is Alex, and I think my wife, Emily, is cheating on me with her stepfather. Emily and I have been married for almost 15 years. We have 2 kids, Sam and Lily, and we've built a good life together. Or so I thought. For the past few months, things have felt off. It started with little things. Her being distant, spending more time on her phone, making excuses to go out alone. I chalked it up to stress at work or needing some personal space. But then I began to notice patterns. Emily would visit her mother and stepfather, David, more frequently. I didn't think much of it at first. Her mom's health had been declining, and I figured she was just being a supportive daughter. But one night, she came home late, smelling of David's cologne. It was a scent I knew well since he wore it all the time. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a knot of unease tightened in my gut. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started paying more attention, looking for any clues that might confirm or, hopefully, dispel my fears. One evening, Emily left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to take a shower. It buzzed with a text, and without really thinking, I glanced at the screen. It was a message from David. "Can't wait to see you again. Missed you today." My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to process what I had just seen. Why would her stepfather miss her? What was he missing about her? I didn't have any answers, but my suspicions were growing by the minute. I decided I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. That weekend, I told Emily I had to work late. Instead, I drove over to David's house, parking a few streets away. I walked the remaining distance, my heart racing with each step. I felt like a fool, playing detective in my own life. But I needed to see for myself. As I approached the house, I saw Emily's car parked outside. The curtains were drawn, but there was a faint glow from the living room window. I crept closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. Peering through a gap in the curtains, I saw them, Emily and David, sitting close together on the couch, talking and laughing. His hand rested on her knee, a gesture that seemed far too intimate for a stepfather. I stumbled back, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just a bad dream. It was real. I didn't know what to do or how to confront Emily about this. All I knew was that my world was starting to crumble around me. I drove home in a daze, trying to keep my emotions in check. When Emily returned later that night, she acted as if nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and chatted about the kids. I played along, not wanting to tip my hand just yet. I needed more proof before I could confront her. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This was the beginning of the end, and I had no idea how to stop it. The days following my discovery were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. I walked around in a fog trying to act normal while my mind raced with questions and fears. Emily's behavior hadn't changed. If anything, she seemed happier, more at ease, which only fueled my suspicions. I knew I needed concrete proof, something undeniable that I could confront her with. I started by checking her phone whenever I got the chance. It wasn't easy, and I felt like a terrible person invading her privacy, but I had to know. The messages between her and David were always deleted, but I found a way around it. I installed a spyware app on her phone that would log her texts and calls. I felt sick to my stomach doing it, but I convinced myself it was necessary. A few days later, I hit pay dirt. Emily had gone out for one of her errands, and I checked the app. There it was, a flurry of texts between her and David. They were planning to meet at a motel on the outskirts of town. My heart sank as I read their messages, filled with flirtation and longing. The evidence was clear. Emily was cheating on me with her stepfather. I decided to follow her that day. I told her I had an important meeting and left the house early. I parked near the motel, hiding my car behind some bushes, and waited. Sure enough, Emily's car pulled into the parking lot half an hour later. I watched as she got out, looking around nervously, and then walked to one of the rooms. A few minutes later, David's car arrived. He joined her in the room, and the door closed behind them. I sat there, staring at the closed door, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. This was it, the undeniable proof I needed. But what was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just barge in there. I needed to think, to figure out my next move. I decided to take photos. It felt sleazy, but I knew I needed evidence. I snapped a few pictures of their cars in the parking lot, the motel room number, and the timestamps. Then I drove away, my mind reeling with what I'd just witnessed. When I got home, I printed out the photos and the text logs. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. I felt a surge of anger and hurt. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed to confront her, to hear her explanation, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, when Emily came home, I was ready. I had the photos and texts laid out on the table. She walked in, smiling, and kissed me on the cheek. I didn't respond. She noticed the papers on the table and her smile faded. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Sit down," I said, my voice cold and steady. "We need to talk." She sat down slowly, her eyes darting between me and the evidence on the table. "Alex, what is this about?" I pushed the photos towards her. "These are pictures of you and David at the motel today. And these are your text messages. Explain." Her face went pale, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. Finally, she managed to whisper, "It's not what you think." "Really?" I snapped. "Because it looks exactly like what I think. You're cheating on me with your stepfather. How could you, Emily? How could you do this to us, to our family?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel any sympathy. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You're sleeping with your stepfather. There's nothing complicated about that. It's disgusting. How long has this been going on?" She looked down at her hands, tears streaming down her face. "A few months," she admitted. It just happened. Just happened." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "People don't just happen into an affair with their stepfather, Emily. This is sick. I can't even look at you right now." She sobbed openly, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you." "Well, you did," I said coldly. "And now we have to figure out what happens next, because this is unforgivable." Emily nodded, wiping her tears. "I understand. I'll do whatever you want. Just please, don't take the kids away from me." Her plea struck a nerve. Despite everything, I knew I had to consider our children. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. "We'll figure something out," I said, my voice softer but still firm. "But things are going to change, Emily. You can't expect everything to just go back to normal after this." She nodded again, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. It didn't make the pain go away, but it was a start, a small step towards whatever came next. The days that followed our confrontation were tense and filled with an awkward silence. Emily and I barely spoke, only exchanging necessary words about the kids or household chores. I could see the guilt and regret etched on her face, but it didn't lessen the betrayal I felt. I was a man adrift, trying to find some sense of normalcy in a world that had been upended. I knew I couldn't keep the kids in the dark forever. Sam and Lily were perceptive, and they had already sensed that something was wrong. One evening, after putting them to bed, I sat down with Emily to discuss how we would handle this with them. "We need to tell the kids something," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the situation. Emily nodded, her eyes red from crying. "I know, but what do we say? We can't tell them the whole truth. It would destroy them. We'll tell them that we're having some issues and need to take a break from each other," I suggested. "We'll figure out the details later, but they need to hear it from both of us." The next day, we sat Sam and Lily down in the living room. Emily and I held hands, presenting a united front even though we were anything but united. "Mom and Dad need to talk to you about something important," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been having some problems, and we've decided that it might be best if we take a break from each other." Lily, our youngest, looked confused. "What do you mean, take a break?" Emily squeezed my hand, taking over. "It means that Dad is going to stay somewhere else for a while. But we'll both still be here for you, and we love you very much." Sam, who was older and more perceptive, looked from me to Emily and back again. Is this because of Grandpa David? Emily and I exchanged a quick, startled glance. Why would you say that, Sam? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Sam shrugged, looking down at his hands. I don't know. I saw Mom with him a lot lately, and I heard you guys arguing. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Sam, what you need to know is that this isn't your fault. Sometimes adults have problems that kids can't understand, but we both love you and your sister very much. Lily started to cry, and Emily pulled her into a hug. It's gonna be okay, sweetie, she whispered, her voice trembling. Mom and Dad are going to work through this. After that conversation, I moved into a small apartment a few miles away. It wasn't much, but it was a place to clear my head and figure out my next steps. Emily and I agreed to keep things civil for the kids' sake, but the tension between us was palpable. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of her betrayal, and it was like a knife twisting in my heart all over again. One evening, a couple of weeks after I had moved out, I received a call from Emily. Her voice was shaky and desperate. Alex, I need to talk to you. Can you come over? Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I arrived, she was sitting at the kitchen table looking pale and drawn. What's going on? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. I ended it with David. Completely. I told him we can't see each other anymore. A mix of relief and skepticism washed over me. Why now? I asked. Because I realized how much I've hurt you and our family, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to make things right. For the kids. For us. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Emily, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done, but I appreciate that you're trying to fix this. She nodded, wiping her tears. I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything. Her words hung in the air and I found myself torn. I still loved her, despite everything, but the trust was shattered. I'll think about it, I said finally. But this isn't something that can be fixed overnight. I understand, she whispered. Thank you for even considering it. That night, I lay in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling. I had a decision to make, one that would shape the future of our family. Could I find it in myself to forgive Emily and try to rebuild our marriage? Or was it time to close this chapter and start anew? The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The confrontation had only just begun. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to decide what to do. Emily's pleas for forgiveness echoed in my mind, but so did the image of her and David together. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and it gnawed at me, making it impossible to focus on anything else. I needed to regain control of my life, to find some way to take back the power I felt I'd lost. One evening, while I was sitting alone in my apartment, an idea began to form. It was petty and vindictive, but the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. I didn't just want to move on. I wanted to make sure Emily and David felt the pain they had caused me. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions. I started by gathering all the evidence I had collected, the texts, the photos, everything. I made copies and put them in an envelope. Next, I did some research and found the contact information for the HR department at David's workplace. He worked in a respectable firm, and an affair with his stepdaughter would surely ruin his reputation and his career. With everything prepared, I sat down and wrote a letter to David's boss, explaining the situation and including the evidence. I knew it was a low blow, but I didn't care. He deserved to face the consequences of his actions, just as I had to face the fallout of his betrayal with Emily. I mailed the letter the next day, feeling a grim satisfaction as I watched it disappear into the mailbox. It was done. Now, all I had to do was wait and see what happened. A week later, I received a call from Emily. Her voice was frantic and angry. "What did you do, Alex?" she demanded. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied calmly, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "David got fired!" she yelled. His boss received a letter with pictures and texts. They terminated him on the spot. "Good," I said, feeling a twisted sense of justice. "He deserves it. You ruined his life," she cried. "No, Emily," I corrected her. "He ruined his own life when he decided to have an affair with you. You both did." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought you'd go this far." Well, you never thought I'd find out, did you? I shot back. You didn't think about the consequences when you decided to betray me. What's next, Alex? She asked, sounding defeated. Are you going to destroy me too? I took a deep breath, considering my next words carefully. No, Emily, I'm not going to destroy you, but I'm going to make sure you understand the gravity of what you've done. I want you to feel the weight of your choices. She sighed heavily. I already do. Good, I said, my voice softening slightly. Because this isn't just about revenge. It's about making sure this doesn't happen again. It's about protecting our kids from the fallout of your actions. After that call, things changed. Emily was more subdued, more careful. She knew I wasn't going to let her off the hook easily, and that seemed to terrify her. But she also seemed more determined to make amends, to prove that she was truly sorry for what she'd done. I decided to take her up on her offer of counseling. We started seeing a therapist together, working through the pain and betrayal. It was a long, arduous process, but bit by bit, we began to understand each other better. The sessions were tough, forcing us to confront the issues that had led to the affair in the first place. There were tears, arguments, and moments of despair, but there were also small glimmers of hope. During this time, I also focused on my own healing. I spent more time with Sam and Lily, making sure they knew they were loved and supported. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with and took up old hobbies I had neglected. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. As the months passed, Emily and I reached a fragile truce. We were far from healed, but we were making progress. The trust between us was still broken, but there were moments when I could see a path forward. I didn't know if we would ever fully repair our marriage, but I was willing to try. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Emily and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. She reached for my hand, and I let her take it, feeling the warmth of her touch. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving us a chance. I looked at her, seeing the pain and regret in her eyes. It's not going to be easy, I warned, but I'm willing to try, for the sake of our family. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Me too. And so, we continued on our journey, step by step towards an uncertain future. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal and move forward together. Months turned into a year, and while the pain of betrayal still lingered, I began to see a path forward. Emily and I had made progress in therapy, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It was a rocky road, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt, but we were committed to trying. For the sake of our kids and for the life we had built together, we pushed through. During this time, I focused on my personal growth. I had spent so many years defining myself through my marriage and family that I had lost sight of who I was as an individual. I took up running, a hobby I had abandoned long ago, and found solace in the rhythmic pounding of my feet on the pavement. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, expanding my support network and rediscovering parts of myself that had been buried under years of routine and responsibility. Emily, too, was working hard to regain my trust. She cut off all contact with David and focused on being a better partner and mother. She was more present, more attentive, and more open about her feelings and struggles. While the wounds of her betrayal hadn't fully healed, I could see her genuine effort to make things right. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset like we often did now, Emily turned to me. Alex, there's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I looked at her, my heart skipping a beat. What is it? I've been offered a promotion at work, she said. It's a great opportunity, but it means moving to a different city. I wanted to talk to you about it before making any decisions. A mix of emotions washed over me. This was a big decision, one that would affect our entire family. What do you want to do? I asked, genuinely curious about her feelings. She took a deep breath, looking out at the horizon. I want to take it. I think it would be good for us to have a fresh start, a new beginning away from all the memories and pain here. But I don't want to do it without you and the kids. I considered her words carefully. A fresh start could be exactly what we needed. If we do this, we do it together, I said firmly. We'll need to discuss it with Sam and Lily, but if they've are on board, then I think it could be a good move for us. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. Thank you, Alex. I promise I'll make this work for all of us. We spent the next few weeks discussing the move with Sam and Lily. They were understandably apprehensive at first, but the idea of a new adventure soon excited them. We visited the new city, exploring neighborhoods and schools, and gradually, the idea of starting over became less daunting and more exciting. The move was a whirlwind of packing, goodbyes, and logistics, but we managed to get through it together. When we finally arrived at our new home, it felt like a weight had been lifted. The clean slate we had been craving was finally within reach. Life in the new city was different, but in a good way. Emily thrived in her new role, and our relationship continued to heal. We found a great school for the kids, and they quickly made new friends. The change of scenery did wonders for all of us, allowing us to focus on the future rather than the painful past. One Saturday morning, as we settled into our new routines, I decided to take a walk through a nearby park. The crisp air and vibrant autumn colors were invigorating. As I walked, I reflected on how far we had come. The journey had been painful and challenging, but it had also brought growth and a renewed sense of purpose. Lost in my thoughts, I almost didn't notice the woman approaching me until she spoke. "Excuse me," she said with a warm smile. "I'm new to the area and was wondering if you knew of any good hiking trails around here." I smiled back, happy to help. "Actually, I do. There's a great trail not far from here. I'd be happy to show you if you have some time." Her name was Sarah, and we spent the next hour hiking and chatting. She was friendly and easy to talk to, and by the end of the hike, we had exchanged phone numbers with plans to meet up again. It was a simple encounter, but it reminded me of the possibilities that lay ahead. Returning home, I found Emily and the kids playing a board game at the kitchen table. I joined them, feeling a sense of contentment that had been absent for so long. We laughed, joked, and enjoyed each other's company, the shadows of the past slowly fading away. That night, as Emily and I lay in bed, she turned to me, her eyes soft and full of emotion. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Alex. I know it hasn't been easy, but I believe we're stronger now because of it." I squeezed her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We've come a long way, Emily, and while there's still work to be done, I'm hopeful for our future." As we drifted off to sleep, I felt a peace that had eluded me for so long. The journey from betrayal to healing had been arduous, but it had also been transformative. We had faced our darkest moments and emerged stronger, more resilient, and ready to embrace whatever came next. In our new life, we found hope, love, and the promise of brighter days ahead. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace with the path we were on.